pick up the next big issue, right? So, all right, we are slightly upset about the taxes, and it's got nothing to do with government. The same would have been true 10 years ago, and the same hopefully may not be true 10 years from now. We don't know, but it's always better if at least your income is going up year on year, and of course then the percentage tax you pay, but at least you have more money in your account, and the country's income or the sum product of its goods and services, of course, the GDP. We are about the 7% mark, slightly less, and unfortunately trending a bit downwards. Now, currently there is no major global crisis. I know there's Ukraine and I know the others are going on, but there's no major crisis. So hopefully it'll become better. But is that going to be enough? Because the government seems to be spending the money on the infrastructure. The trains are being poured, the highways are being built, but we are not ticking up to that 8%, 9% mark.
I think, Rishabhji, 8 and 9% is something which is very important, because I'll like to add a geopolitical perspective to it. Look, world has changed after Trump has taken over office. Now, I think there are 4 years ahead of us. Modi ji is going to be in power. Trump is going to be in power. We are indicating an alignment towards US, and Trump is willing to roll the red carpet. Look, there was a time, look at the numbers of China before Biden and, before Biden and Obama, and after Biden and Obama. In 8 years, China's trajectory altogether changed. We have this 4-year window where the red carpets are being rolled towards. China is being sidelined. Decoupling of supply chains is happening. You have a volatile Middle East which can any day erupt with the ceasefire getting off, or Iran coming into the hitting range, which can happen any day, even tomorrow morning. With all these things, we have to look what best can we take the advantage of the things and keep on moving, because there are some things which we have to let go. There are some things which we have to align for the strategic good and for the good of the nation as well. And honestly, if you ask me, things like strategic autonomy may not be practically sustainable in the long run, because the world order is changing. It's not your intentions are changing. And for the interest of the Bharat and for the interest of all the Bhartis, we might have to trade off some things, and we might have to see how do we live on. Because that additional punch of growth is not going to come from the normal ways. If we keep on doing what we are doing last year, this year results are going to be no different from the last year. So what are we going to do different this year? What are those global opportunities which can come into us? And let us face, Rishabhji, people like China will not want us to be the #1 FDI destination. They don't want our startups to get the maximum money. And any point of time, and HPMV can peak up. Okay. It is dominant right now. It can peak up. So with all these,
okay. So here's the larger picture for those who are interested, because larger picture does matter, right? So the state of the economy is pretty good. We've just got just under $700 billion in foreign exchange reserves. Okay. Yeah. Last year, which is in December 2024, the total FDI received by the country went past $1 trillion US. So overall, the picture of the economy seems pretty decent. But Mr. Iyer, now it looks good. It looks like the highways are being built. It looks like the government efficiency is improving. It looks like welfare schemes are being done, and the houses in the Awas Yojana are being built, and the ration is being given out. It looks good. When we step out, we are seeing the markets are busy. People are buying cars. I can tell you, I live in Delhi, and going out just to have a meal has become very expensive. So, there seems to be wealth around us. But when it comes to the GDP figure, 6.5%, the economic survey says we need to be at 8%. And I think you and I can agree with that. Why are we not hitting 8%?
Okay. So again, Modi ji always likes to think big, plan big, and have those grand targets. Now the reality is, if we truly want to be Viksit Bharat by 2047, and we have to look at China as an example, we need to deliver 2 decades of 10% growth. The 6 and 7% growth is not going to take us. Yeah. And we are running out of time. And if you are serious about 2047, we need 10% growth for 2 decades at least. And is it possible? It is very much possible. And, building on Sumit ji's observation, see, we have our geopolitical tailwinds, right? We are an important Quad member. Things are coming in. But there are some things big that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister need to look at, right? Probably we set up a 1 trillion infrastructure blitzkrieg, right? So we have tasted some success with Gati Shakti and other things. But unless we think big, we think of, let's say, over the next 5 years, we need a 1 trillion fund which will look at, infrastructure in a very different way. Now, how do we bring that kind of money into the system? Some of the things like that you said, supply side constraint can also go away the moment we have that kind of push in manufacturing and infrastructure. We have to start thinking and probably start doing something fundamentally different, start monetizing, pool in our key assets, airways, ports, highways, monetize them. Maybe about 200 billion will come from there. Sovereign wealth fund and, invite global pension fund, about 300 billion will come from there. Set up the infrastructure bond, keep a target of $500 billion. There's a lot that can be pushed through. So unless we think big, unless we have 10 Shenzhen-like SEZs around the country, one gift city is not enough. Unless we really think big and push for that kind of infrastructure or export-led growth. Now, why I'm also saying export? See, remember, Japan, Deutschmark, let me wear the professor hat. There are some examples of currencies that have done well over a long period of time. Many of the currencies have weakened, including us. Unless we have strong export, unless people around the world want our goods and services, we can't have a strong currency. We can't have a respect of people around the world.
Okay, but Mr. Iyer, I'm trying to find the X factor, because many of the things that you're saying are happening at a pace, never before, right?
Yes.
The highways are being built at a pace never before.
Yes.
The houses in this country are being built at a pace never before. Our defense localization, which is indigenization, is happening at a pace never before. So everything seems to be happening at a very accelerated pace, but when you boil it down to the GDP figure, 6.5%. What's the X factor missing there?
So the thing is, you're absolutely right. The thing is, because we have had such sluggish economy and we came from fragile five, compared to that fragile five where the previous finance minister of the earlier dispensation left us, what we are doing now looks really big. But the sad reality is, if we want to be where we want to be, we need to do this at a much higher pace. So while we are doing well, and thank God we are doing well, we need to push this hard and we need to keep ourselves some really big, big goals.
It's called state change, orbit change, and let me put that in a perspective, right? You put on a kettle of water, okay, to make your tea, and you keep heating it, and the temperature keeps rising, keeps rising. But at a point, at 100 degrees, there's a state change. It goes from water into gas. So you keep doing it, and it's incremental, and then suddenly a state change happens, and then you go into an incremental orbit. Now, let me get Alok Mehta in this. Alok Mehta, having observed this exercise, both in politics and, and the budgetary exercise and the political economy, as we call it, for the better part of 50 years, we are seeing the incremental growth. It seems to be happening at great pace. We can actually visualize the trains, we can ride on the roads, we can get into the new airports, we can see the ports that are being built from, Vizinjam to Maharashtra. But why is it not translating, do you think, into that state change in GDP growth, where you do, or you start those 2 decades? 2 decades will come in 2047, but we are not this year going to start that 2 decades either.
Rishabhji, the problem is because it's still the hangover of the socialist system we talk about. Socialism, certainly for poor people or the middle class also, the Britain or America also, they do a lot. But here, we still feel a number of lobbies are working there, and they say, okay, we have this type of system, everything we want free. And the other way, because we want, you are very right, Prime Minister Narendra Modi since last 10 years, what he visualized for the lower people, self-employment, this kind of what we are talking. We can't be a China, we can't be United States. The problem is with us because we are more democratic country. I think you will agree, and all our guests will agree that we have a democracy. We can't do what the Chinese did, because you want to do a road. Here you see in East Delhi, if you go some bridge, okay, they are not giving the land, then the problem. So these kind of problem also there. So we are taking some steps, and the government of India is also trying their best. But that's why I think the self-employment, more for education, people, the mindset should be changed. The problem is we are not spending more money still, 5%, 6% for education, more for the health sector, because then the whole society will be more aware about the problems of the country. Because in such a big country, you can't solve the problem only by the GDP. I can understand we are going better than the United. You see Britain, how poor the economy is very suffering a lot. Germany is shocking, maybe because of the Ukraine crisis, but even then I feel that the Germany economy was better than anybody else in Europe. But now they are also facing a serious problem. So in the comparison, India is better situation.
Yeah, no, so like I've told you, we are the fastest growing global economy in the world. Okay, so yay. But the reality check is that yes, if by 2047, which means exactly 22 years from now, okay, you want to be developed economy, that means that your basic standards of living and healthcare and everything is in comparison to developed economies. Yes, you will have to do ideally double digit growth for the large part of the next 2 decades. Now, my question is, when will that start? It culminates when it starts, but first it has to start. General Dwivedi, there are some big ticket items. I'm going to discuss AI because that's the flavor of the moment. But let me put a premise. Okay, let me put a premise. For the entire period of our independence, there are 2 major expenditures which are going to be dealt with. Number 1 is import of energy. Number 2 is defense, and more importantly, the import of capital expenditure in defense. Salaries and all you can't do anything about, right? 2 biggest points. Now we are seeing incremental reduction in how much monies we send abroad because we are making our own defense goods. Then comes the state, General Dwivedi, where forget having to spend money, you are earning money because you are selling the planes and selling the missiles and selling the helicopters and selling the tanks. How far are we from that state change?
Well, Rishabh, before I answer your question, I also put on my professor's hat where I teach management in top of the line business schools and also spent about 3 years in China as a defense attaché. The time has come that we need to take a quantum leap, because I was in China around the time when the Chinese took a big leap. It's a time we need to take a big leap. 8% to 10% is imperative. 6% will not do. Because when you see the big economy, if China is growing at 5%, they are adding about $1 trillion to the economy. When we are growing at 6.5%, we are only adding 300 billion to our economy. So therefore, we need to churn the pot. And secondly, we need to do it differently, because today our manufacturing is just about 14% of our GDP, whereas Chinese manufacturing is 25%. When the supply chains are realigning, they are realigning toward Vietnam, they are realigning toward Malaysia, they are realigning toward Indonesia, but they are not wholeheartedly realigning to India. Now coming to your defense the part of it, you see, Rishabh, the security and the defense budget are interrelated. Over the last about 8 to 10 years, our security concerns have escalated, but our defense budget has shrunk. In about 2014, we are contributing about 2.4% of GDP to defense. Today it is below 2%. Well, that is not kept pace with the security concerns. And second point is, you rightly said about manufacturing. We have a target of about 1.75 lakh crores by 2025 this year, and about 50,000 crores are exports. Well, that has to be met only once we are able to bring in technology. Unfortunately, our exports are not high technology exports.
Yeah.
They are the exports which are at the lower end of the spectrum and not at the higher end of the spectrum. Now, that's one change we need to do. And second point is, despite our self-reliance push, we are still the biggest importers of the defense equipment
in the world.
We are contributing about 9 to 10% of the global imports. Now that has to change. So therefore, I would recommend 2 very important things. Firstly, as you said, AI. We need to go wholeheartedly on our research and development. Today we are contributing 0.67%, means less than 1% of our R&D. Whereas China is more than 2%, they contribute, the Americans are contributing more than 4%. So we need to do, quantum jump in our research and development and go for technology, either TOT, or we need to innovate, but we need to get to high-end technology manufacturing. And secondly, Rishabh, we need to actually bring in huge change in our skilling, because 40% of our labor force is in agriculture, and we are not able to skill our workforce. Until we do that, we are not going to get the dividend of the so-called the.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I just, let's just put perspectives, right? The country is doing just fine. Okay, we are not in a crisis. There's no disaster going on. I know there's a stock market correction, but stock market has been in record high every month for the last year. Okay, so it's going to correct because it needs to. Otherwise, you're going to have a big trouble for any investors 6 months down the line. So, other than that, the country is doing great. You can see it, you can feel it. So, we are not in trouble. But we don't want to be just, not be in trouble. We just don't want to be getting past the finish line every year. We want to be winning and, and setting a great pace. It's really complicated, okay? This is the stuff of Nobel Prizes. And Ajay Dua, you don't want to go too fast because then you overheat and then you have a bubble. At the same time, you have to ensure social justice, because if a few people are getting too rich and then other people are upset, that creates law and order problems. So, let alone other political uncertainties. So, it's a very fine and complex balance, but it boils down to, I think, what General Dwivedi was saying. In the end, you have to be a technological superpower. That's what's going to matter. Now, how do we get there?
I would say, Rishabh, just putting on a thinking cap, that we need to step up and drastically step up the priority and the funds, etc., which we attach to the education and the healthcare sector. Then the entire population of the country gets involved in nation building. Today, if you look at the number of people out of the 140 billion who have an opportunity, they may have the desire, but the opportunity to contribute to nation building, and nation building not altruistic sense, but to themselves and thereby to the nation, it will happen when you use this population, which you have the manpower advantage, the workforce advantage, turn it into a reality. And I think our center, state, private sector, all had been lagging behind drastically.
Okay, so Ajay Dua, I want to pick that thought with you, okay, because every month I take interviews for people to hire, right? If you want a job, okay, and if you think there's no job growth happening in India, come send your CV to me. I have jobs available. Now, when I'm announcing what the job interview questions are going to be. So if anybody is smart and sees this clip, they'll know what I'm going to ask them. I asked 5 questions. One, I ask the names of the chief ministers of 4 states, one from the north, one from the south, one from the northeast, and one from the west. Then I asked the names of 4 international presidents or prime ministers. I asked what is the GDP of India. I asked in which year was the Battle of Plassey fought. And I ask a very, very simple question: what is the first law of motion? Okay, that's all. It just gives me an understanding of how much this person has actually done in 16 years of schooling. 9 out of 10 people, Ajay Dua, can't answer more than 20% of those questions.
Yeah.
What's gone wrong? Where have we gotten so badly wrong?
I'm not surprised, Rishabh. That is what all the surveys, including independent private surveys of quality of education, are pointing out to. Saying, yes, you may have achieved in the country universal primary education, saying everybody at least has an opportunity to go to school. But what is the quality of education being imparted to them? That is what your 5 questions and the interviews reveal, that they have gone through a process, but they have not become employable. The quality of education must improve drastically. And one of the inputs for improving education is going to be better nutrition, better health care. All these things work on one another. You take it from me, once you have people who are healthier, people who are actually more educated, school level. I'm not talking of college level education, etc. That is, the brilliant ones go there, and the German vocational system brought in post the Second World War. But today, your 10 standard ones also, many of them would not be able to answer the 5 questions which you are rightly trying to judge.
Now the reason that, of course, and you can say, oh, that's bookish knowledge, right? It's not really a skill set. But the reason is, these are people who voluntarily want to do journalism. Okay, so you voluntarily want to one day sit and cover the union budget. All right, it's a voluntary choice. Now, Sumit Peer, if almost no one I'm speaking to, so 9 out of 10, don't know what the GDP of India is. Okay, despite the fact that there is so much knowledge freely available. I mean, I know 20 years ago you had to get a newspaper or go to a library and figure all this stuff out. Now it's popping on your screen multiple hours a day, but it's not registering. Are we in trouble because of that?
Rishabhji, we always say that we have 800 million youth, and our demographic dividend is going to last for next 70 years. But the kind of things what you are talking about is definitely a thing to worry about, because our education system is still stuck with Babur, Humayun and Akbar, unfortunately, and we are still talking about their Gaurav Gathas. And unfortunately, we are not attuned it to the needs of the hour. Because if we were to use that time to teach them GDP, teach them politics and all, and we say, no, if you want to talk politics, you have to go to political science only, then only you will be taught politics. Why do you need the GDP? You're already teaching chemistry. Because at the end of the day, that education wherein everything culminates to all these things, right? That holistic approach is not there. It is still pretty much segmented what British left us, and we are trying to improvise it. Honestly, British made education system to make clerks. They did not make education system to make intellectuals and geniuses. And still in our country, we are lacking that concept, which I've been always trying to put across, is unitary entrepreneurship. We are not pushing off that. People want to have a startup, want to have $1 billion valuation, must find a VC to burn a few $100 million to reach that. Well, that is not going to happen with everybody. So unless and until we change that orientation, that कि पढ़ लिख के नौकरी नहीं करनी है, पढ़ लिख के you have to become contributors, you can still contribute to the GDP, you can still contribute to the country. That change in orientation and mindset is not happening.
Okay,
that
all right. Okay, so you've hit exactly what my balance few minutes I'm going to spend. Let me get Mr. Iyer in on this, okay? Because Mr. Iyer, I can also argue the contrarian. I can say that as long as you make a good pizza, you don't need to know what the first law of motion is, okay? But you need to make a good pizza and sell a good pizza, and that's perfectly fine. So the issue then is that for a large part, especially in North India, right, for people whose still dream job is to do what Mr. Dua did, is to join government at any level, okay, let alone at the senior level that he served in, for them that's still the dream job. Why are these people not becoming entrepreneurs? What are we missing in terms of our mindset?
Okay, so amazing, brilliant question, spot on, Shivji. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. There are 3 stages. One is, as part of education, you learn, you hear, you can reproduce, but it is only when you reach a stage where it becomes a lived reality for you, right? One is improving the content that is being taught to the students. Second is the way it is delivered and the way it is, received by the student. It becomes a lived reality of their experience. Education doesn't embed. So that's first thing. Second, unfortunately, over the past few years, looking at education, student as customer, this is another very unfortunate thing that has crept in our education system. Right from basic education. Today, if you ask, see, I deal with 23, 24, 25-year-olds, MBA students. But even if you ask at a high school level, today the schools, the teachers don't want to, tell the students that you are not doing well. Why? Because a kind of student as a client, a student as a market has, that kind of mindset has come in. Everybody wants to say you are doing well. That false sense of, that you are doing well is embedded in right from that early age, that people are not really pushing hard to work, to really study and learn and see how to apply things. So I'll say the problem is twofold. One is the education has to move from merely saying this is this, to how do I see this playing out in my real life and how it becomes my lived experience. Second, let us look at education as what it is supposed to be. It is not some, it's not some hospitality industry, for God's sake, right? We are doing character building here. So somewhere that mid-course correction also has to happen. This is me speaking as a very, very passionate, academic for my life.
Alok Mehta, the bottom line in this is government is not going to do this. Government cannot do this. The only job of government from today till the next 20 years is to get out of the way, because Bharat is going to have to do this. So how do we create that energy that we are not looking at the budget and we are expecting that Nirmala will make an announcement and then that will fix all these things? No, I mean, you and I will have to fix all of these things. So how do we A, get government out of the way, and B, get the guidance, the margdarshan from government on how do we get this out of the way?
Very rightly said, Rishabh. I think that's why the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, either in Man Ki Baat or awareness in the all over India, you see the skill development and the education for literacy for the girl child. I think these kind of it's taking time, but certainly you go to Bastar. I visited people who are the self-employment from skill development centers. You see in Dantewada, you'll surprise in Jagdalpur. So these kind of awareness we need in remote area, in rural area especially. And I still say, people, honest teachers are there. Maybe in the education system, Sumit, you must be not aware that the new education policy now it's going to implement it because it's a state subject. That's why you are very rightly said. We need more honest people in the society. That's why it depends on not only the government, in the political system. If our political parties also, they should have at least honesty, minimum honesty, to create awareness for self-reliance, for more literacy, for more health awareness. And that's why support are the positive points of the any government, any party, because we need nowhere in the world this kind of system what we are in. Sometimes I feel that some political parties, they create more chaos other than any foreign power or what we talk about it.
Okay,
so I think that's why we need
I just
more
want
discipline.
to touch upon a last thing and then we will take a break. Okay, so Sumit, let me flip it around, right? I can have a contrarian argument. I can say that for anybody who thinks that Indian people don't like to be entrepreneurial, I can tell you, ask any Marwadi, ask any Gujarati, okay, entrepreneurship is running in their veins, okay, the dhanda, okay, it is people from my kind of backgrounds who, still grew up that the concept of starting your own company did not exist. You were supposed to become a professional. Now, whether you become an engineer, you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, you were supposed to become a professional. But dhanda is not something unknown to India. The difference being that dhanda versus trading versus low-level manufacturing to cutting edge, that this is the best in the world. That's the X factor, Sumit. Now, how do we hit that X factor? It's not like we don't have good businessmen in the country.
We have all the things what we need. The only thing is, there's one thing, Rishabh ji, हिंदी में बोलूंगा, पढ़ाई और कमाई दो अलग अलग चीजें हैं. Because if I want to do a padai and make a kamai out of it, that is where the system collapses, system fails. Padai is for your mental enlightenment, know the world, know what you are doing. But the challenge is that if I want to use my padai as a way to get a nokri and to get the encashment and be employed somewhere, that is where the challenge is. So the padai what we learn has to fundamentally change the paradigms and teach us, look, I'm awareing you, I'm enabling you, but that doesn't mean that you are supposed to exactly, if you study history, you're going to teach somewhere history or you have to go anything to do with history. You can still be a journalist, you can still be an entrepreneur, you can still be so-called, some people will mock me for saying pakodonomics. Even if you can set up a big street shop, there's nothing wrong in that. So I might not have those inhibitions. I have done my master's in, let's say, literature. How can I run a halwai ki dukan? That is where the problem starts coming. And when these things start getting into the society, then one day you will have a Haldiram, which is a global success story. Then one day you will have all those things which come up. Yeah. Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani was not a great pada lekha guy, right? But he had that thing in him, and that is where Reliance is today.
Yeah,
but if we get to the fact that padai and kamai are two different things, unless until that fundamental change happens, I don't expect future things to change.
No, but fundamental change is possible. I think Reliance is a great example. When I began my career, Reliance was primarily an oil and gas company. Okay. Today we don't even think of Reliance as an oil and gas company. We are thinking we are thinking geo, and we are thinking technology and retail. So It's completely transformed. So I need to take a break. We are going to be back in a couple of minutes. Yeah. Quickly, Sumit, you want to make, everybody wants to make a point. Okay, 10 seconds. Sumit, then General Dwivedi. Sumit.
Look at Wipro. It started as Wipro oil mills. Tel banate the. Now they're the biggest IT name in the world.
Okay.
They started from making sabun and tel.
Okay, General Dwivedi.
Bishop, just I want to share my experience because I am so much in education. First and foremost, I think we are not spending enough on education, less than 1%, why China and South Korea and other countries gone up with education. Second point is, today, Kamai and Padai have to go together. When we talk campus to corporate, we got to ensure that our students who pass out from the business school, they are employable. That's not what is not happening because there is a big gap between the campus and corporate. And thirdly, please understand that today we are not in knowledge age. We are in the conceptual age. Conceptual age means new concepts. We are not in the rote learning. And I do a lot of work with the Central University on new education policy. Until we translate on the ground, it's only on the paper.
Okay.
It has to be translated
Let me
on the
put that
ground.
into perspective. One of the world's most valuable silicon chip companies never even makes a silicon chip. All they do is design. Every single one of us and all of you watching this broadcast have one of their design chips in your phones. It's called Qualcomm. They don't manufacture anything, but they hold the design patents, and that is where the value chain is. It's a very interesting concept of the new age that we are living in. I need to take a very short break. We come back on the other side. See you in a minute.